Long ago, in the great land of Ayétoro, where the sun kissed the earth and rivers flowed like silver veins through the land, there was a hunter named Akoni. Unlike the other hunters, Akoni was not the strongest nor the fastest, but he was the most cunning. His clever tricks had won him fortunes, but also many enemies. Akoni had a daughter named Abeni. Sharp-witted, fearless, and beautiful, she was not like other maidens who waited for life to happen. She made life happen. With her honey-colored skin, fierce eyes, and a mind sharper than the edges of an iron spear, Abeni was her father's greatest joy and greatest challenge. Her mother, Inyola, was a wise and patient woman who often scolded Akoni for his mischief, but secretly admired his cleverness. "Your daughter has your tongue, but she has my heart," she would always say to Akoni whenever Abeni outsmarted the village elders. While other girls spent their days preparing for marriage, Abeni sat under the great boab tree, listening to the stories of farmers, traders, and travelers. She asked questions, learned their secrets, and sharpened her mind like a warrior sharpens his blade. One evening, the great gong sounded through the village. The king's messengers had arrived, drumming on their talking drums. "The prince of Ayétoro seeks a bride, but she must prove her worth through 3 great tests. Any maiden who fails shall be banished from the land forever." The village trembled. The prince was handsome, rich, and destined to be king, but the punishment for failure was cruel. Many girls wept in fear. When Abeni heard the news, she smirked. 3 tests? I need only my mind to pass them all. Akoni, her father, nearly choked on his palm wine. "Abeni, don't be foolish. Do you know how many girls will fail? Do you know how many mothers will wail when their daughters are cast out of the land?" Abeni placed a hand on her father's shell. "Do you not believe in your own daughter, Baba?" Akoni sighed. He knew Abeni was different, but he also knew the world was not kind to women who outshined men. "If you must go, then you must win." "I will," Abeni promised. Her mother, Inyola, took her hands. "Child, remember, a true queen wins not with force, but with wisdom. Be careful." Abeni nodded, but in her heart, she knew she would not just win, she would change the game entirely. The first challenge was to fetch water from the River of Spirits, a forbidden place where souls who had died unjustly roamed. The water was sacred, and no man who had entered the river had ever returned. At sunrise, the maidens gathered by the river bank, each holding a clay pot. They trembled as they heard whispers floating in the air, unseen hands pulling at their clothes. Some dropped their pots and ran. Abeni watched carefully. Then she walked forward. Instead of dipping her pot into the water, she knelt and spoke. "O spirits of the river, I do not come to steal from you. I come to honor you. Tell me your sorrow, and I shall listen. The wind howled. The river churned violently. Then a voice rose from the depths. We were wronged in life. No one sings for us. No one mourns us. Abeni bowed low. I will sing for you. She lifted her voice and sang a dirge, weaving words of sorrow and remembrance, calling the names of the forgotten spirits. The river stilled. Take what you need, the spirits whispered. Abeni filled her pot and walked back to the palace. The other maidens gasped. The king and the prince watched in awe. She had passed the first test. For the second challenge, Abeni was led to the royal drum, the gangan of the gods, an enchanted drum that spoke only to those who understood its language. The king's drummers beat the drum, but it remained silent. The other girls took turns striking it harder and harder, but the drum refused to speak. When it was Abeni's turn, she did not strike it. Instead, she listened. She placed her hand on its surface and hummed. Slowly, a whisper rose from within the drum. A leader does not demand answers. A leader listens to the wisdom around them. Abeni nodded. The drum has spoken. The king's mouth fell open. The prince, watching from his throne, could not hide his admiration. She had passed the second test. The last test was the hardest. The king declared, Tell me, what is the one thing more powerful than the gods, stronger than the spirits, and older than time itself? The girls tried. The sun? Wrong. The ocean? Wrong. Death? Wrong. Abeni closed her eyes, thinking of all she had learned. Then she smiled. It is a mother's love. The courts gasped. The king leaned forward. And why do you say so? Abeni bowed. Because even the gods obey a mother's cry. Even death can be delayed by a mother's plea. The love of a mother can shape kings and bring down kingdoms. Silence. Then the king rose. The girl is wise beyond her years. She has passed all 3 tests. The crowd roared in approval. Abeni stepped forward. Great king, I have won fairly, but I did not come to be a bride. A collective gasp filled the air. The prince stared at her stunned. I came to claim my destiny, Abeni continued. I wish not to stand behind a man, but beside him or ahead of him. The king, instead of growing angry, burst into laughter. You remind me of myself in my youth. He turned to the prince. Son, will you marry a woman who refuses to bow? The prince smiled. I would be a fool not to. The king declared, Then you shall not just be a wife, you shall be Queen Abeni, ruler of the land beside my son. The entire kingdom celebrated Abeni and the prince's wedding. Unlike other brides who were expected to be quiet and submissive, Abeni walked into the palace with her head high. adorned in the finest gold and purple robes. During the wedding feast, the king, in his booming voice, asked, "Abeni, what gift do you seek for your wedding?" Without hesitation, she replied, "I do not want any special gift. I just want you to keep your word that I can rule alongside my husband, not behind him." The prince, smiling, stood and said, "A wise man does not silence wisdom. I welcome my wife not as a shadow, but as my equal." With that, Abeni became not just a wife, but a co-ruler, marking the beginning of a new era in Ayétoro. Her father, Akoni, beamed with pride. "I always knew she was my daughter," he said smugly. And so, Abeni ruled not as a wife, but as an equal, a legend for all time. Though the kingdom rejoiced in their union, not everyone was pleased. The elders grumbled, and some chiefs plotted against Abeni. "She is a woman," they whispered. "She will weaken the kingdom." But Abeni, aware of their murmurs, did not react in anger. Instead, she invited them to a gathering. She placed 2 large jars before them, one filled with water, the other filled with palm oil. "Tell me, which is stronger?" she asked. The chiefs laughed. "Palm oil, of course. It is thick and rich, while water is weak and tasteless." Abeni nodded. "Now watch." She poured a drop of palm oil into the water. The oil floated, refusing to mix. Then she poured a drop of water into the palm oil. It sank, disappearing into the liquid. "The strength of a kingdom is not in one thing," she said. "Like palm oil, men have ruled this land for generations, but without water, without wisdom, balance, and softness, your meal is incomplete." The elders, impressed by her words, bent their heads in respect. From that day forward, they stopped doubting her leadership. Abeni and her husband lived happily until one day, 3 neighboring kingdoms, Jabari, Ogunde, and Ibanuje, formed an alliance to invade Ayétoro. They believed that with a mere woman as queen, the kingdom would be weak. The warriors of Ayétoro were ready to fight, but Abeni stopped them. "War should be the last answer, not the first," she declared. Instead of rushing into battle, she disguised herself as a traveling merchant and journeyed to each enemy kingdom. In Jabari, she learned that the king's daughter had been kidnapped by slavers. In Ogunde, she discovered that their people suffered from famine. In Ibanuje, she found that their prince had been cursed by an unknown enemy. Using her wisdom, Abeni freed the kidnapped princess, arranged for food to be sent to Ogunde, and sought a healer for the cursed prince of Ibanuje. By the time she returned to Ayétoro, the kingdoms had abandoned their plans for war and instead swore loyalty to her. Her husband, the prince, now King Adewale, watched her in admiration. "You have won battles without bloodshed," he said. "You have turned enemies into allies." And so, Ayétoro grew stronger under Abeni's rule, feared not for his warriors, but for the wisdom of its queen. In time, Abeni and Adewale were blessed with 3 children. Princess Morayo, as fearless as her mother, trained in the art of war but with a sharp mind. Prince Ifayemi, a gentle soul who sought wisdom in books, proverbs, and the stars. Princess Aduni, a gifted healer whose kindness touched the hearts of many. Abeni raised them not just as royals, but as leaders who understood that strength and wisdom must walk hand in hand. She often told them, "Do not seek to be feared, seek to be respected. Do not seek to conquer, seek to unite." Her daughters were taught to wield swords as well as their words. Her son was taught to listen before he spoke. When Morayo asked, "Mother, what is the most dangerous weapon?" Abeni replied, "A foolish tongue. For with it, you can start a war that even 1,000 warriors cannot stop." Years passed, and Abeni grew older, but her wisdom never faded. One day, she called her children and grandchildren to her side. She placed a golden crown, a warrior's sword, and a scroll of wisdom before them. "Tell me, which of these is the most valuable?" she asked. Prince Ifayemi picked up the scroll. "Wisdom lasts forever." Princess Morayo took the sword. "A kingdom must defend itself." Princess Aduni chose the crown. "A ruler must be honored." Abeni smiled. "You have all chosen well. But remember, a sword without wisdom is destruction. A crown without honor is tyranny. And wisdom without action is useless." With that, she laughed, knowing her legacy would live on. When Abeni passed away at an old age, the kingdom mourned her, but her wisdom remained in the hearts of her people. Legends were told of the queen who ruled as an equal, the warrior who fought without swords, and the mother whose teachings shaped a new era. Even today, when a woman speaks with wisdom, elders in Ayétoro say she carries the spirit of Abeni the wise. And so, the tale of Abeni, the cunning daughter of Akoni, lived on forever. The story of Abeni teaches us that true power is not in strength alone, but in wisdom. A wise leader turns enemies into allies. The greatest leaders teach others how to lead. A mother's lessons shape generations. Please like, comment, share this video, and subscribe to our channel for more educative and inspiring stories and myths. Until next time, this is Folktales by Fayoke, where history comes alive.